Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you very much for joining this Connect, which is going to be the last Connect for this year. Okay, so very excited, extremely excited. But before we start out with introductions, obviously it's an age-old ritual that we do. We tell everyone what is Connect, right? Most of our members already know what Connect is, right? And the whole idea is that we give them another hint about what Connect is all about, what the Connect community is all about. So Connect was initially sought out to be an entirely only a NIF user community, wherein people who are using NIF, would come up and explain certain things about the experiences, talk about how do you use NIF and all these things. But then after which we realized that the community was growing and expanding beyond that. All cybersecurity experts, enthusiasts, all of them were very excited to come here and maybe basically share their knowledge, share their experiences. This could be customers, partners, everyone. So there was a lot of things that we did during this year, and this is the 9th Connect. It's the last Connect for the year. And so what has it come up to? So Connect is basically a community now that wherein anyone, any cybersecurity enthusiast can come here and share their knowledge about about their experiences. This could be threat, it could be defensive, this could be just about connecting technologies together. That's what it's all about. And the community that we have built till now has been growing ever since, and has been contributed towards by many of our well-wishers, people who have worked with us, people who have not worked with us previously but have now collaborated with us, and we're building a lot of stuff together, and we're thankful. This year was a great one for Connect, and I'm really happy and really would like to thank not only our partners, our contributors, but also the community members as well. So as you know, my name is Mervin. I moderate Connect, NIF Connect, and we have a great lineup today. So we have some subject matter experts that are available with us. Okay, I'm very happy that these people are here. There's a lot of information that they can provide, and we can learn a lot from them, right? So that's the whole idea, right? What is the idea behind Connect? So it's basically that sharing information. Like, might I add that this whole Connect is being streamed live on YouTube, right? So at any given point in time, if you get disconnected from this session, you can obviously go and view it on YouTube. As you can see, the link is right here. All you need to do is youtube.com/nifhq, and you can view it over there. It's very simple. Now, as I mentioned, Connect is all about sharing knowledge, and we appreciate people who come up and share their knowledge. We have received many emails in regards to people who like to talk about certain cybersecurity aspects. Could be could be offensive, could be defensive, whatever information you like. All you need to do is write to us at connect@nif.8 and tell us your subject, tell us your name, and we're more than happy to get in touch with you and figure out how is the best way you can present this information to the NIF community. And may I add that all presenters are insured an Amazon gift voucher of 1,000 rupees. So yes. So as I mentioned, this was a great year. These were the Connect community's heroes that we have. Many of them that have contributed well to the Connect community. As you can see, they're also on the Connect community page. Lot of technology knowledge partners that we have, right? As you can see, this was a great year wherein we, with existing partners and customers, the technology and knowledge partners that we had for this year, and it was great. It was a great year. Some of them we've been working with, some of them we've recently started, collaborating with. A lot of them have been kind enough to provide their experts and make sure that we receive a little bit more information about how technologies can work together. Very great year. without further ado, I'd like to break down the agenda and give a little background as to why are we doing this? Why are we doing these particular topics in short? So we're going to start out with introduction to data lake by Chetan Mundhada. That session is going to last about 30 minutes, followed by understanding what is SOAR by Ruchir Shah. Now, which again is going to last for 30 minutes. Now, why are we doing both of this? I'll give you a little backstory on this. So we receive a lot of emails from community members asking, what is a data lake? What is SOAR? And we have covered some aspects of SOAR, nothing on data lake as of yet. We have covered some aspects of SOAR, but we have not covered it completely. So our expert today, our experts, right, will give us a complete breakdown of what a data lake is, what exactly SOAR is, right? They're going to connect those puzzles for us, and they're going to unravel many things that we've had questions on, and they're going to lay it out straight for us. So without further ado, I'll move on to our first presenter, who is Chetan Mundhada, VP Sales, right? And for NIF, great guy, expert, subject matter expert. And let me give you a background. So Chetan drives sales for NIF, where his focus is on growing the company's business, the enterprise and the sales level. He has a successful record of 14 years in the IT infrastructure and security domain. His keen interest is in data analytics and specifically using data to detect and prevent cyber threats. So he's the right guy for this, and he's closely, he loves closely working with customers and helping them find the best solution and extracting the best value from their tech investments. On the lighter side, when he's not doing his day job, he loves working on early stage, education for children. So he's the right person to break down to us what is data lake. Right. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it on to Chetan, who will take this session forward.
Thank you so much, Mervin, for the fantastic intro. I never knew that I could do so many things. But anyways, so what I'm going to do today is I'll be sharing with you guys what is my understanding of the data lake. And, I'll try to make this session as light as possible because the data lake is actually a very heavy subject. What I'm going to do today is I'll give you guys a brief about what is a data lake, what according to us is a data lake, and I'll also try to briefly touch upon what is the role that NIF plays in helping organizations set up a data lake, and how are we placed very well to support organizations in this initiative. So, wow. I really hope all of us get to sit here one day and we can just relax and look at the lake. This is the better version of the data lake. This is the data lake where you can actually sit and have a nice time. But essentially, data lakes are actually a lot more than this. Right? Data lakes, so basically, data lakes essentially, if you look at organizations are generating huge amounts of data, right? This data is not just in terms of the documents that they generate, documents, emails, videos, audios, but also a lot of structured data like transactions, like logs. Essentially, data helps you find out what's happening in the organization right now. Data lake, as the name suggests, is a place where all this data can be brought in one place. So in a very small nutshell, data lake is essentially a single repository of all types of data in the organization, and they basically help organizations set up a centralized repository of consuming data. Right, but data, as I said, right, different types of data. So you've got different types of mechanisms for storing different types of data. You've got different mechanisms for storing documents, files. But at NIF, we are focusing on a specific type of data which is like event data, semi-structured data which is which is generated in the form of transactions, in the form of logs. Having all of this data in a single place allows organizations to know what are the various events which are happening in the organization, right? And that essentially helps you derive a lot of real-time intelligence. We call this types of lakes as event store data lakes, right? What is an event store? An event essentially tells you what happened at a given point of time. So for instance, when Chetan walks into his office and he swipes his card at the entrance, a log gets generated which says that, hey, Chetan walked into office at 9 a.m. today in the morning, right? When somebody logs into an application, a log gets generated which says that I have logged into my application. Or let's say when a firewall, right? A firewall protects the organization. When the firewall allows or denies somebody to access one of the applications or access any system, a log gets generated which says that, hey, a firewall has allowed or denied somebody from doing something. Now, essentially, if you are able to capture all such events which are generated by various devices in the organization, right, you are able to capture what is happening in the organization at the real time. Now, this data is very different compared to documents that we typically generate, like documents, images, all of these get classified as completely unstructured data. Whereas event data follows some sort of a structure. Data available in databases is completely structured. So when we are talking about event store data lakes, we are actually dealing with data which comes in either a semi-structured format or a completely structured format. So essentially, when I make a banking transaction, the core banking database of my bank updates an entry saying that Chetan has withdrawn an X amount of money from his bank account and maybe deposited that to somebody else. This data comes in a completely structured form. Now, essentially, an event store data lake is an aggregation of all such types of structured and semi-structured data. Essentially, when you want to set up an event store data lake, what you have to do is capture data from all of these various systems which generate this data and be able to derive intelligence out of this data in real time in a centralized repository. Now, the various essentials of setting up an event store data lake would be, first, is that you would need an ingestion framework. What are the different sources of event store data, right? Event store data gets generated on devices. Event store data gets generated in applications, in devices like firewalls, and applications like core banking systems or authentication systems. This data gets generated as syslog files or let's say entries in the database table. How can I collect this data? This data flows over either as TCP packets or as UDP packets, or at times applications write these data to some databases, so I'm actually able to go and read this data from these sources. Now, essentially, the first component of setting up a data lake would be to have an ingestion framework. Like the data lake should be capable of reading from all of these different varieties of sources and is able to ingest all these different types of data on the centralized data lake. So the first component of setting up a data lake is having a mechanism to ingest these different types of data into the data lake. The next component would be to set up processing framework. Now, whenever I log in, let's say I have logged into my desktop, an event which gets generated which says my user ID was, let's say, Chetan, and I logged in, and if I entered the correct password, it says the login was successful. Now, this event comes as a line of text, right? Now, this line of text has different data points, right? My username, now whether my login was successful, which IP address did I log in from, or any other additional data points. Now, what needs to happen is that if I have to derive intelligence from multiple such events, I actually have to extract what each of these events had. Right? Essentially, the extraction of data points from an event line is called as parsing. So basically, when I read a line of text and I say, okay, the user ID was Chetan, and let's say the login status was successful or unsuccessful, I'm actually parsing that line of log and I'm extracting that data in a different format, right? But the moment, let's say for a given organization, you figured out the username, you can very well say that, hey, Chetan belongs to a sales department, right? I can actually derive some additional data points just based on what data was captured in the event. This is called enrichment of data. So essentially, enrichment can be in terms of either custom enrichment, like, which is specific to environment, like what is the asset type, whether it belongs to a particular department, or the location where this person usually sits out of. All of these data points can be added to the event store. It actually gives you a lot more context than just the name. So imagine this way, that if I have a data store where I'm actually able to classify people not just based on the name, but also based on additional custom context, it gives me a lot more information about that. So that essentially means enrichment. Annotations, though, annotation slightly more technical than this. Annotation allows you to have a common addressing mechanism to similar events happening across various devices. So, for instance, a Windows device would have its own mechanism to generate an event. A firewall may have its own mechanism of generating an event. But let's say a login failure can actually happen across all of these devices. So, annotation allows you to address all of these events across different sources using a common template. Right? Transformation allows you to view data in a much simpler format, the way it can be consumed. So essentially, when this data gets generated, before you store this data, you have to process this data so you can actually make sense of this. So the second and a very important component of setting up a data lake is to have a processing framework which allows you to make sense of all the semi-structured data that's been gathered. Right? Next, right, what you need is storage and retrieval. Now, I'll tell you why is it very important. Typically, most people would assume that the volume of documents or files that people generate in an organization is tremendous. But we have experience. We've spoken to organizations, and we've seen from experience that the amount of event data generated in an organization can actually amount to significantly more than the document data also. Right? We've got organizations who are generating terabytes and terabytes of data every single day, and this data captures every single event that has happened in the organization. Which is why, when you have such a huge amount of data being captured, you need to have a mechanism whereby you're able to store this data and retrieve this data. Which brings us to the third and the very important component of the events to data lake, which is the storage and retrieval. The storage and the retrieval tier ensures that I am able to index data so that I am able to bring back data when I want it. I'm able to bring this data at a much faster speed, right? When you're going to scale up in terms of having terabytes and terabytes of data being stored every day, you'll actually have to have a balance between cost of storage vis-a-vis performance. So the storage and retrieval mechanism, the storage and retrieval component of the data store should ensure it's able to deliver a very good performance. It allows you to scale. It ensures that the storage system where you're storing this data is resilient enough so that any component going down doesn't break down the data lake. That's the third essential component of an event store data lake. The fourth one and the final one is it ties in very closely with the very objective of setting up data lake. Why are we setting up data lake? We are setting up the data lake so that we are able to derive intelligence from it. Right? Once you have all of this data stored in a single repository, what users need to do is users need to be able to analyze the data and are able to derive intelligence. Different ways of doing analysis. Analysis can be done by maybe putting up this data as a dashboard in front of users, or having some sort of reports or compliance being done, or right up to the way of building some machine learning or artificial intelligence tools which are able to read this data and are able to automatically generate insights for users. So that's essentially, these are the four major components or major essentials of an events to data. Just to sort of give you an idea of how large the ecosystem is, I've just picked up this slide from somewhere which talks about all the various tools which are available in the ecosystem. I'm not sure if it's an ecosystem, but it's actually a jungle, right? Every icon represents a technology which delivers certain functionality in setting up data lakes or setting up big data platforms. Now, that is the amount of complexity that exists in the system, where for every single function, there are multiple applications which can be used, and every application has its own advantages over the other. Now, that's how large the ecosystem is. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to take just two examples of how to set up a data lake, and I'm going to tell you what are different toolkits that I used to set up a data lake, right? The first example that I'm going to talk about is the Hadoop way, right? When you talk about big data, there are two main technologies that come to mind. One is called the Hadoop, right? Hadoop essentially helps you store large and very large volumes of data, and guys like Facebook, Netflix, all of these people, they use Hadoop to store petabytes and petabytes of data. So essentially, if let's say somebody wants to set up or create his own data lake using Hadoop, what would he need, right? The first component that he would need is large amount of storage. Now, one of the main reasons why Hadoop is used in storing data lake is that it allows you to use multiple computers or multiple devices which have their own local storage, and it allows you to have a single view across all of these devices. So, for instance, let's say I have my desktop, and let's say my desktop has 100 gigabytes of storage, and let's say there are 100 users who have their desktops. And if there's a mechanism for me to aggregate storage across all of these desktops and create a single repository, right, that would give me about 10,000 gigabytes of capacity. That's essentially what Hadoop does. Hadoop essentially allows you to have multiple nodes, all of which have their own local data, and allows you to have a single addressable space across all of these systems. This is achieved by using what is called as the HDFS, or the Hadoop Distributed File System. What the HDFS does is HDFS gives you a single interface. So think of it like a really massive D drive on a computer. So let's say the D drive in a computer is, let's say, 500 petabytes of capacity, right? That would be something that Hadoop does. Hadoop essentially aggregates storage capacity across multiple nodes and gives it to you as a single addressable index, right? But once you have all of this data, Hadoop actually stores data in its own mechanism. And if you have to search this data, then you have to use a component called MapReduce. MapReduce essentially creates indexes of this data and reduces that as MapReduce jobs. So if you want to search any data, all of this can be done using MapReduce. But MapReduce is actually a very low-level language. A normal programmer or somebody who's trying to analyze data cannot actually work with MapReduce. If he starts working with MapReduce, the effort of extracting data using MapReduce jobs will be so high that he will not be able to use just MapReduce. Which is why there are different tools like EdgeBase, right? EdgeBase basically gives a columnar structure to this data, right? But if you want to access data from MapReduce, you've got tools like Pig or Hive, which allows you to convert simple jobs or simple tasks into MapReduce processes and allows you to access those data, right? What we've seen so far is basically mechanisms to have a very large index and have mechanisms to access this data. What you need besides this is also mechanisms to ingest this data, right? So you've got toolkits like Scoop, Flume, or Kafka. All of these are essentially open source components, right? Scoop is basically a combination of SQL and Hadoop, right? Scoop allows you to read data from databases and put them onto Hadoop. Flume and Kafka are essentially queuing engines, which allows you to read streaming data and stream them into a Kafka system, right? Essentially, what Scoop, Flume, or Kafka or other components in this side allows you is to store data or to bring data onto your data lake, right? And then you've got the system which allows you to access this data, right? Once you have this data, you need to be able to make sense of this data. So Mahout is essentially a machine learning framework which allows you to run machine learning jobs onto this data and to derive intelligence. Datadog is a visualization framework which allows you to visualize this data or create different charts. Similarly, Hue is also a visualization framework which allows you to view this data. Essentially, what you have to do is all of these separate components, you have to make them work together and and set up the data lake. Zookeeper is basically an orchestration engine which allows you to make all of these components work together. So basically, if you have to set up a data lake of your own using Hadoop grounds up. You'll have to make use of these open source tools, make them work together, ensure that you're able to bring in data, ensure that you're able to make sense of this data, ensure that you're able to derive intelligence from this data. So that's the open source Hadoop way. The other system, and this is also another very popular one, especially when you're talking about event store data, is using technologies like Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch or Solar are basically search engines. They allow you to search data, and they have their own mechanisms to collect, transform, store, and visualize data. So when you want to collect data, Elasticsearch comes up with 3 components, which are their own components, which are Logstash, Kibana, and Beats. Beats essentially allows you to read data from various sources. Logstash allows you to transform the data, meaning generate parsers, generate enrichments, combine, join, do lookups, process this data, and then Elasticsearch allows you to store data and retrieve the data. The visualization, analytics, or all of those activities can be done on a component called Kibana. Kibana allows you to view the data the way you would want, generate dashboard, generate reports, and manage the whole cluster. So essentially, if you're thinking of setting up a data lake, and if you start using Elasticsearch, these are some of the components that you would be using to set up the data lake. But now, if you actually take up setting up of a data lake as a project, what will you come up with? I think the first and the foremost thing, which you need to do when you decide to set up a data lake is have a clear objective. What is the objective? If you are, let's say, a large organization, right, setting up the data lake is actually just a step. The objective for setting up the data lake is deriving insights, right? So I think defining that objective is very important, right? Developers or people who build softwares, for them, building an efficient data lake in itself is an objective. But for, let's say, a bank would actually want to derive insights from the data. So a lot of times organizations jump into this journey of wanting to set up a data lake, and they spend a huge amount of time making all of these open source components work together, right? Resulting in the fact that your time to go live with the data lake goes in months, right? Essentially, as a bank or as a commercial organization, what you want is you want insights from the data, and you want those insights to start flowing in today, right? You don't want to wait 6 months till the time you set up the data lake and then you start pumping data and then you start deriving insights. So this is one of the biggest challenges in setting up a data lake. It's just that there's just so many components, and each of these components have their own functions, that setting up the whole data lake just so that you can start ingesting data and start deriving insights from this data takes a huge amount of time, right? The other part is sustaining the data lake. Setting up the data lake is one thing, but every time you bring in a new source of data, you have to ensure that you're able to ingest the data correctly, you're able to extract various data points from it correctly, you're able to enrich that data, pre-process that data. Once that data gets stored in the data lake, then you start analyzing that data. So sustaining the data lake itself is a huge challenge. So, which is why a lot of times when organizations takes up massive data lake projects, they take a long amount of time just setting up the data lake, and in this whole process, they lose interest in waiting for the insights to start coming from the lake, and that's where most of these projects fail. Right? Now, when you actually talk about NIF, right? NIF provides customers with an integrated framework for collecting, for parsing, for annotating, enriching, storing, analyzing this data, and deriving insights. So, if a customer who's, let's say, planning to set up a data lake on NIF, the basic plumbing of managing the data is already in place. Now, so whether your data is coming as a syslog message, as a JSON object, or it's getting stored on some database, there is a mechanism for ingesting any kind of data. So collection is taken care of, right? Typically, when you talk about events data, most of the event data is generated from commercial applications. So you'll have a commercial application, let's say a Palo Alto firewall, or let's say an Oracle database, or a MySQL database, or Apache log. All of these logs comes in more or less standard formats. What we've done is we've invested huge amount of R&D time in building parsers for all of these technologies. So essentially, when you're bringing any of these data from any of these technologies, you can straight away extract data points from all of these events and start making sense from it. The annotation, the enrichment framework, all of that is already in place. Once you process the data, we're able to store this data on Apache Lucene. Apache Lucene is essentially one of the core ingredients which we use to build products like Elasticsearch or Solar. Right, that's the mother technology from where all of these products have been derived. What we've over a period of time also done is we've also built plugins whereby you're able to write this data onto a Solar or an Elasticsearch, whereby you're actually able to use widely available open source technologies like Elasticsearch or Solar to store your data. Right. NIF also has the data interpretation and the analytics framework already in place. So basically, an organization which decides to use NIF already has the underlying infrastructure in place. All they need to do is they need to start sending data and they need to start analyzing data. And actually, if you look at it in a way, right, a bank is best placed to tell us what is it that they want to derive from the data. So most of the time and most of the productive time for the bank is best spent if they are trying to derive intelligence from the data rather than trying to set up the data lake in the first place. So these are the, this is how we help customers in setting up data lakes, right? Some of the advantages that we have is that the collection, parsing, enrichment, the whole process is completely painless. Since the indexing is done in an open format, right, which can be, let's say, Elasticsearch or Solar, all of this data is available is available to you in an open format. So let's say tomorrow, if you want to access the data through a different interface, it's completely possible. Let's say you want to throw out NIF and let's say use any other open source technology, it's completely possible. So despite opting for a commercial technology, customers don't have to get locked in with this technology for a long period, right? You have access to all the benefits of open source since the data is stored in an index in an open source technology. All the benefits like using other open source technologies with the data lake is available. Third-party developers are able to access. So let's say tomorrow, if any of the customers' employees decides to build a machine learning model, which is let's say independent of NIF, he would still be able to use the model on the data because it's stored in an extremely open format, right? Broadly, the correlation, analytics, automation. The next session in today's Connect is going to be around SOAR, right? NIF comes with a very, very tightly integrated SOAR platform, and I think Ruchir is going to help all of you understand how can you leverage automation and orchestration to make sense of the data and to also take action based on that data. So one of the main advantages for customers by using NIF for setting up data lakes is that it provides customers an integrated solution to ingest data, to process data, to store data, to make sense of data, and to take actions based on this data. That's by and large what I had to say about data lake. I'll be open to take questions at any point of time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over the charge to Mervin. And Mervin, over to you, buddy.
Thank you, Chetan. That was an amazing presentation. It's like we all were schooled, but it was in a very nice way. It was very nice, amazing presentation, and that was a great understanding on data lakes. I think we are answering some of the questions that previously were unanswered or we didn't have any information about. So thank you very much, Chetan. Obviously, if anyone has questions, please hit the Q&A tab and you can go ahead and ask away, right? Moving on from there. Yes. So again, if you have any questions, you can join the list of previous winners. The best question obviously will win the best question asked for this particular Connect. As you can see, we have had 6 particular winners. There are instances where people do not win this, right? Because the questions asked for that whole session were, not there or not up to the mark. So that does happen, right? Social Geek Award also a good way to win a 1,000 rupee gift voucher. All you need to do is tweet on Twitter and post on Facebook using hashtag #NIF.Connect and @NIFHQ, and you can easily win a 1,000 rupee gift card. Okay, so again, about the community, right? It's a very important factor that we try to emphasize on the community. So cyber, the whole cybersecurity warriors, we're coining this term. It's all about the community, and what the community is basically we're trying to improve Connect at a very high level. We're trying to get as much of the community members to get their inputs. You can mail us at connect@nif.8. You can connect with us at stack.nif.8. And you can ask your questions, give us your inputs, let us know your thoughts. Like this session was particularly put into place because some of them asked us, generally in question format is what is a data lake, right? There's also the concept of security data lake that obviously Chetan covered, and it's data lake in general and breaking that down with open sources. So we accept and we appreciate such things as we mentioned about SOAR as well. So write to us or connect with us at stack.nif.8 and connect@nif.8, and we're more than happy to include that and encompass that into our next Connect for next year. Okay, so without further ado, then we move on to Ruchir Shah. Okay, so he's going to help us understand what is SOAR, as mentioned by Chetan as well. It's going to be a really exciting presentation by him. Now, Ruchir is business development manager at NIF. He's a skilled end-to-end salesperson who also is very technically adept. He loves solving complex business challenges pertaining to security analytics for customers. Now, he's very intuitive and he loves to learn new things in relation to cybersecurity as well as things in general. Over and above that, on a personal level, he's a mean rapper. So all you need to do is drop a beat, and this is our own little personal gully boy over here who raps at a beats notice. So without further ado, I've said enough, and I think he can take it over from here. So Ruchi, please.
Thank you so much, Mohan, for that lovely introduction, especially the part where you told people that I'm a rapper. I mean, it's a hidden talent, but sure. Thank you. Very good afternoon to all our viewers. I appreciate you guys taking out the time to join this session. And the first part covered the data lake session covered by Chetan was absolutely amazing. So today I will be talking about SOAR and the role it plays in effective security operations. I will be more than happy to answer any questions, so please feel free to interrupt me and ask any questions if you have some. So as I said, today I'll be giving you an insight into SOAR. Okay, so these are the topics I'll be covering today. What is SOAR? What does a SOAR consist of? What can you integrate in a SOAR platform? Problems in today's security operations center. Benefits of having a SOAR in a security operations center, presenting a business case for having a SOAR in your environment, whether you should go for a standalone SOAR versus a tightly coupled solution where a SIM is there along with the SOAR. And finally, I would be showing you SOAR in reality or in action. So moving on to the first topic, what is SOAR? SOAR stands for Security Orchestration, Automation and Response. Basically, SOAR is an aggregation of various solutions meant to optimize security operations by, basically managing to collect data from multiple disparate sources. And by means of using multiple services and applications, it allows you to manage incident handling workflows, right up to the point where you can go to closure or an intermediate remediation of issues with or without minimal human assistance. Essentially, the goal of using a SOAR stack is to improve the efficiency of physical and digital security operations. SOAR is a feature set, it's a platform, it's a separate tool, or it's something which is an add-on to an SIEM, right? It could be any one of those things. The term SOAR was coined by the research firm Gartner and basically can be applied to, as I said, compatible products and services that essentially help optimize incident response functions. So yeah, what I just said, ironically, the definition might sound a little complex, but it really simplifies your work. And let me break it down for you a little further, right? So according to Gartner, the three most important capabilities of SOAR technologies would be threat and vulnerability management, incident response, and security operations automation. So when I say threat and vulnerability management, so basically a SOAR platform would be able to integrate with multiple threat intelligence or threat management platforms and multiple vulnerability management platforms to support the remediation of vulnerabilities, and also could provide formalized workflow, reporting, and collaboration capabilities. So for instance, a SOAR platform could integrate with a technology such as Kaspersky or a Symantec or a VirusTotal in order to find out vulnerabilities and get more threat intelligence, and also could integrate with tools such as Nessus or as well known as Tenable, or something like Qualys to manage vulnerabilities which arise on the platform, right? Second point being incident response. Incident response, so basically a SOAR technology helps support how an organization plans, manages, tracks, and responds and provides a response to a security incident, right? And finally, of course, automation being the most important part of it, a SOAR technology would support the automation and the orchestration of workflows and processes and reporting in a sense. Okay. What does a SOAR consist of, right? So a SOAR basically consists of four main components, right? One is fetching the relevant log data, performing a lookup function using threat intelligence services. You could perform remediation action, and at the end of the day, you could do some level of case management, and you could perform your reporting functions easily. Now, it is not restricted to these four steps. Of course, based on the use case, you could change and you could tailor this according to your requirements. But yeah, essentially, SOAR consists of these four, actions, and all of these above steps constitute what is called a security playbook, right? So a security playbook is essentially a set of steps or rules which are to be executed in response to one or more events generated from some input data. Yeah. So, okay, coming down to what can you integrate in a SOAR platform? You can do lots of things in terms of integration with the SOAR platform. So one is you integrate, most importantly, you integrate your SIEM. If you have a standalone SOAR, you integrate an SIEM and you fetch all the log data from the SIEM solution. Secondly, you could integrate threat intelligence services, as I mentioned, right? So services like Kaspersky, VirusTotal, Symantec, many more, right? You could integrate your ticketing tools or your ITSM tools, basically GRC tools, compliance, right? You could integrate those tools to get some valuable output. You could integrate your entire security stack, right, from your firewalls to your gateways, active directories, EDRs, DLPs, right? Anything and everything which could perform a remediation action. Not only that, you could have data from IT applications, or you could take actions on IT applications as well. So right from your SAP systems to your HRMS, anything and everything you can think of, finance applications, etc. The only criteria here, or the only prerequisite, would be that all of these things should be able to support exchange of data via an API mechanism, and that is the most important thing here. So I've told you about I've told you how what a SOAR does and what it consists of. So basically it has three steps. One is you enrich your data using threat intelligence, you validate it, and you respond to it in a more in the manner which is suitable, right? So this is a framework basically, and NIF per se works with, and a lot of SOAR vendors work with a lot of such vendors, right? So these are just some of them. So for enrichment and for validation, you have your major threat intel providers, and for the response part, as you can see, it could be an Active Directory or an Infoblox or a communication tool like Slack. It could be some action you can perform on your database such as MySQL, a Fortinet firewall, or a McAfee EDR or DLP, right? Could be any one of those things, and not restricted to this, but you could go way beyond. Okay, let me give you a very simple example of SOAR, just so that whatever I've spoken so far makes a lot more sense, right? So essentially, as I said, SOAR has 4 functions. One is you fetch the log data, relevant log data from the data store. Then you perform a lookup function on the same. Third, you go on to the validation or the response part of it. And finally, you perform some level of case management, right? So this is a SOAR functionality which is performed in NIF. But yeah, I can explain you how it works. So basically, if you follow with me, follow my cursor line by line, basically what are we doing here is we are fetching endpoint logs from an endpoint detection and response system, an EDR system, and we are basically segregating it by the device source IP and the endpoint URLs, right? So that is the first step. Secondly, we are using a lookup function such as a virus total to fetch, that virus total, please give me a URL report for the particular endpoint URLs that are that are provided to me. So virus total would come back with a response, and if the response is 1 in this case, basically saying that these endpoint URLs are malicious, you may include it in the results. Similarly, you could do a second lookup with a tool such as Symantec, and you could get basically put across query for the same thing that you fetch that you need to fetch URL results for the particular set of endpoint URLs you're dealing with. And if Symantec responds that these URLs are bad, you can include it in your results. Okay, now comes the validation and the response part, the crux of the entire concept, right? You can trigger an API function. As I said, you need an API mechanism. So you trigger an API function and use a service such as a service now to basically generate a predefined template for the set of malicious URLs that you have. So now that you have been told by the threat intelligence services that the URLs that you are dealing with are malicious, you can just by one query line, you can generate an entire automated report, and you can have that ready at hand to send it to others, right? Now you're performing the remediation function. So as I said that we were dealing with EDR data or endpoint data, so you could trigger an API on an EDR. So let's say, presuming that you have a Carbon Black EDR or any other also, you trigger an API action on the Carbon Black EDR service, and for those particular set of malicious endpoint URLs, and that remediation action will take place automatically. Ideally, what happens is that these functions are performed in a very it is a manual process when you're dealing with such a use case in a SOC, right? The entire idea of a SOAR is to automate this entire process. So coming down to the last line, which is the case management, right? What you're basically doing is you're creating a ticket and essentially basically creating an incident and handling it to an analyst, and you're sending this particular predefined template or the report that we've generated to the required groups such as SecOps or such as EPSec, or it could be your upper management, or it could be the NOC, whatever it is, right? So yeah, basically in a set of 10 lines, you have performed 4 key functions, which ideally would be taking a lot of time if you would have done this entire procedure manually. So by means of an example, I've just explained you why a SOAR is really, really important and how it simplifies and speeds up things. Okay, so coming down to continuing on that front, what are the problems in today's SOCs, right? What challenges are they facing? So today's security operations centers primarily rely on current, traditional SIEMs, which only provide alerts based on the rules that are triggered in the system, right? So you write a standard rule, a static rule, and once they are triggered, then only an analyst can take action on it, right? Most of the current security operations centers use a manual approach to deal with the alerts generated, and that involves too much of an involvement of an L1 or a lower tier analyst. And that is a very, very big issue, because these analysts deal with incredibly high number of trivial alerts that a SIM generates, right? And so your alerts also, you have trivial alerts, you have actionable alerts, and you have really critical alerts. So a tier 1 analyst basically would deal with trivial alerts, and while each alert on an average takes about 3 to 5 minutes to deal with, but if you see the number of alerts an SIM generates as a whole, right, and if you multiply this number, it collectively takes up a lot of time. So think about the fact that an analyst would be spending hours just dealing with alerts which are absolutely, it is an absolutely futile process, and there is no value to it. This phenomenon is very popularly called as alert fatigue. Okay, another major problem is the slow response time. So let me just define two terms for you before I move ahead. So in SOC, two main terms are mean time to detect and mean time to respond. So the difference between these two is the response time. So today's security operations centers take on an average of about 4 to 6 hours to deal with the simplest of incidents, right? And this difference is very, very high. Now, what is the disadvantage of having a slow response time? It is very obvious that if you are not dealing with an incident effectively or on time, it gives an adversary who might have already breached a lot of layers of security to bypass the SIM very, very easily, right? I mean, the more time you give to an adversary, the easier it gets. Another big issue is the operational inefficiencies that a SOC currently has today. So I could break it down into 5 points. One is the lack of automated workflows or processes to deal with security incidents. So, right, I mean, if I consider this as a use case for an incident, right, I could, this is an automated approach. While if you have to deal with this incident manually, there is an entire set of steps which is in a haphazard fashion, and there is no proper process or no proper approach to it, right? Secondly, the case management or the reporting is a fairly manual process in today's time also. So you actually have to draft mails and you have to create these reports yourself, and you have to send it to the required set of people or personnel, right, by yourself. And again, that's a tedious, tardy, and a time-taking process. Analysts are spending more time on just finding alerts which are actionable or they think is actionable. So that is the number of trivial alerts that are being generated. So when you are trying to find just some actionable data in so much of silos of data, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. So your analysts are essentially wasting your time. And I think security analysts who will be part of this webinar, you will be able to relate with me. And so the remediation process, again, it is extremely manual and ineffective. So let me give you an example, a very, very simple example in this, right? So let's say you get a list of unknown unlisted IP addresses on your SIEM. What as an analyst, the first step that you will take is you would open up multiple Google tabs. You would go on to various threat intelligence and domain lookup websites to search the reputation of those IP addresses. Then you would collate the data yourself. As an analyst, you would collate the data yourself, and you would make a judgment call whether that IP address is actually malicious or not. If it's malicious, presuming if it's malicious, then you would you would compile this data, raise a ticket, and you send this to the network operations center or the network team. And finally, once the data is vetted, then finally the NOC takes some action on it and goes ahead and blocks these IPs on the firewall. So even when I'm speaking, right, you could imagine, I mean, again, when I'm speaking, it is such a drag. And imagine the analysts performing this on a day-to-day basis. And on top of this, you have to create those reports and you have to create those tickets and then manually send it to the required set of people. So it is a very painstaking process and completely ineffective. The last but not least, I mean, another big issue current security operations centers are having is high attrition rates of analysts. So today analysts cannot work, they do not get beyond this process of dealing with trivial alerts. So they are not able to apply their logic, they are not able to apply their skill set to better sets of tasks, to more advanced set of issues where their efforts could be well utilized. Hence, attrition rates in SOCs which are not effective in their processes are really high. Why am I telling all this? Because I am saying all this, it will help you because it will help you understand how a SOAR effectively mitigates or solves all these problems, and which I'll get to in the next slide. Okay, so benefits of a SOAR in a SOC, right? Number one, automated countermeasures. So based on the use case that I showed you before, a playbook, this I could just save in my system, and it could run as and when it is necessary. It is an automated process. So even when a security analyst isn't at the helm, your actions are taken on time. And this also allows your analysts to focus on high priority issues which require more time and more critical thinking. So as I said previously, that you have some actionable alerts and you have some critical alerts which are there. So your analysts can actually focus more time and effort on that, because as compared to 3 to 5 minutes on a trivial alert, these critical alerts take 20 to 25 minutes on an average to solve. So you might have your workforce focusing on that. Second point being that there is an increase in operational efficiency due to the clearly defined approaches that have been set, right? And these are consistent and need not be changed repeatedly. You could reduce your turnover and your attrition rates because people are no longer focused on menial tasks. And of course, you could draw up statistics, you could draw up visualizations, and you could also take actions from those visualizations directly, which not only allow you to not only allow you to understand what you are dealing with, so you can understand basically the statistics of an analyst efficiency and the overall SOC's efficiency in terms of the resolution of issues. Okay. Yeah. Coming down to, okay, so these are just some stats. So a SOC analyst on an average deals with a lot of these manual issues. So when you bring in SOAR, 41% of those issues can be dealt with without a SOC analyst getting involved. The time between the detection of and resolution of an attack goes down from 4 to 6 hours to 23 seconds. And your false positives reduce a lot because the entire process is automated. So you're taking pinpointed correct action. So it goes down to 3%. And this is a stat that we've got from our customers. Okay, a business case for SOAR. So despite of me stating all the advantages, why would a CISO or an upper management of a security firm or any firm would invest in a SOAR when we all know that it could be incredibly expensive and it has its own challenges fitting into the ecosystem? And when you're dealing with a phenomenon called as tool fatigue, where a company has bought 25 such security products and they need to integrate one more, why would you include a SOAR, and how cost effective it is? So yeah, a business case is extremely important because essentially it comes down to that. Being an account manager, I would relate to it best. Yeah. When you invest in a SOAR, lesser investments are made to train your newly inducted security analysts. But obvious, because your processes are in place, your approaches are in place, and to deal with various security related scenarios, and they are already defined in the playbooks. Also, provision for creating automated playbooks saves a lot of cost and effort as compared to writing manual playbooks. So imagine that you have an SIM and you are writing a manual playbook. This would not only require using custom scripts, but which may be inefficient, but also you would require specialized security engineers along with your SOC analysts to build these playbooks and to build these custom scripts, right? Third, and most importantly, which is, and I think all the CISOs would relate here, your operations is key. And a SOAR essentially allows you to focus on the same rather than the engineering side of it. Finally, the SOAR saves a major cost for the SOC in terms of incident response, in terms of effort and cost. Finally, last but not the least, an efficient SOC allows the SOC team to scale up in terms of the number of alerts they are dealing with, but they also optimize the way in which the alerts are dealt with. So your entire approach becomes more streamlined. Okay. A standalone SOAR versus an SIM plus SOAR. So as Chetan mentioned previously, NIF is a tightly coupled SIM with a SOAR, right? And then you have multiple standalone SOAR platforms that are available in the market. So yeah, essentially they have the same feature sets and the same benefits that I mentioned in the previous slides. But standalone SOAR comes with its set of challenges. So one of the primary benefits of SOAR is that integration of disparate technologies that exist both inside and outside the organization. So this capability helps teams respond to threats faster because all the information they need is in one place. And it also reduces the risk of human error and time because analysts spend a lot of time moving between tools, and they would have something that where you could do everything through one unified interface. Unfortunately, when teams choose a standalone SOAR solution, they miss out on some of these benefits, and they also incur additional costs such as integration and maintenance. So more time and effort are required to simply keep up the data flowing from the SIM to a SOAR solution, because you will have to integrate your SIM to the SOAR separately. Second being the training, right? The analysts must learn two completely different tool sets. So you need to learn your SIM, plus you need to learn the SOAR as well. And these are two different UI UXs and two different tools in terms of the skill sets involved. And this training must be continuously renewed as the staff changes occur continuously, and as I spoke about attrition, so that factor also applies. Finally, the administrative and support aspect, where organizations must support two systems instead of one, and they need to buy a separate license for SOAR, which could be standalone SOARs are traditionally more expensive than the SIM products, and you need to buy a separate license for the same. You need to maintain it separately. You need to have a separate upgrade schedule. So bottom line being that by optimizing the SOC's efficiency and effectiveness with a SIM that features an integrated SOAR, right, a tightly coupled SOAR, not only organizations can include their ROI, increase their ROI, but also effectively reduce their total cost of ownership. And the biggest advantage of all, you get everything within a single unified interface. You get everything within a single pane of glass. So no haggling around with different tools, no managing different screens. It's all in one tool, right? Okay, so finally, time to see the SOAR platform in action, and I would be demonstrating a SOAR use case and a dashboard just for you to get some idea as to how it works. I hope my screen is visible and the console is visible. Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm going to be presenting it on NIF. I'll be showing you a simple use case, and we would be performing 3 of those functions, where I would be performing fetching of log data, looking it up on a threat intel service, and finally sending it across as or report it on an SMS service, right, through an SMS service. Okay, I would like to just take a minute to explain the query. So what we are doing is we are fetching web server logs, and with the ones where we have encountered with 404, which is a very common error code on websites and on web servers. So we are only fetching logs with 404 error codes, and we are fetching logs from the last 1 hour duration, where the source IP is we are aggregating the data by the source IP. We are only including the data where the number of hits on the SIM from that particular IP addresses are more than 200. We are looking up this data on virus total, and we are getting the IP report. So very similar to the previous example that I had explained. And furthermore, we are doing another check where using NIF's own integration with multiple open source threat intel tools. So this checks across 15 open source threat intel tools, and it fetches some data back. And finally, the remediation action or the reporting action, where we are triggering an API of a service called ClickSend, which allows you to get the alert for this particular set of malicious IPs on your SMS, on your mobile phone through an SMS or an email or a call facility. Here we are going to be using an SMS facility. So let me just say, I mean, you could change the mobile number here, and you could send it to any mobile number which is put in here. Oh, I'm sorry, so I just logged out. Give me a second. I'll log back.
So that was great to hear. So if anyone has any questions, very simple, just click Q&A tab. I believe you already have a question. Answer it whenever at leisure.
Okay.
Very simple process.
So I think
we're back, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think Saurabh has asked a couple of questions, wherein one being, which type of rules are involved in a security playbook, because above they also happen in Nessus, and it's a type of tool. Okay, and how SOAR is beneficial for remedial process might not be. Okay, Saurabh, so Saurabh, just to address the first question, Nessus is primarily used for vulnerability management. So the Tenable Security Manager, primarily what you would do as a function, right? You would have a set of IPs and you would scan it, and you would get the vulnerabilities or the CVE numbers or the IOCs which are associated with the same. Now, what NIF allows you to do is, let's say, what a SOAR platform would allow you to do is, you would be able to fetch, let's say you are getting a set of IPs from your various sources across your security or your IT infrastructure, right, in your organization. So you can get this data from your firewalls or from your routers, whatever it is, right, from whatever set of devices it is coming in from. The second step being that you could use a lookup function. One is you could use a TI service, and this could be any TI service, right? So you are not restricted to one which is being provided. If Tenable provides a TI service, you are not restricted to that particular set of services. You could use a service from a Symantec or a Kaspersky or any other threat intel vendor that you choose to have, and you could run a lookup function wherein you could get threat intel, proper threat intel, in order to do a more detailed RCA, or in order to in order to understand what set of remediation actions you could be taking, right? Again, this threat intel data could be also provided to you at the log level. So at the log level itself, you could get certain additional fields which give you more insight into your log data, and furthermore, it could help you aid your analysis. Third being that when you're taking a remediation action, so here, if let's say you've integrated your Nessus with the SOAR platform, right? Yes, you could run a Nessus scan directly from the SOAR platform. So you don't need to go back to the Nessus tool and say that, okay, now I have these set of IPs that I've got from the SIM or I have got from the SOAR, and I need to run it separately on the Tenable Security Manager. And you don't. So as I said, you don't need to be switching back and forth between screens. You could do it within the SOAR platform itself. So you could easily trigger an API and say that, okay, perform a vulnerability scan on this set of IPs that I've got from the SIM, and give me the CVs or the IOCs associated with it. So you'll get it on this particular screen itself. That's the entire idea. And I don't think Tenable would. Of course, you can create a report in Tenable, but you could do much more when it comes to case management. And of course, in a SOC, when it is reporting, right? Reporting is a much more comprehensive process than something you would just be as compared to something that you would be just doing with Tenable, or you would be generating a report for the set of IPs and their associated CVs. So your comprehensive reporting can be done from within this platform itself. So you could do much more than just generating a report. What a Tenable could do, exactly a SOAR platform could do, and it could mimic those functions, and it could do much more. And you don't need to go through the hassle of using another tool at that particular time. So this would be primarily the benefit in terms of the remediation process. And think about it, right? I mean, if you're sitting in a SOC, this approach makes it so much quicker and so much easier for you to perform, to deal with the use case. I hope I've answered your question. I mean, if you have any other counter questions, you can please put it in the Q&A box. I'll just move on till that time. I'll just move on with the demo.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So let me explain you the query, not the query, but the output line by line. So as you can see, we've got a set of IP addresses with their individually filtering it by this condition where only more than 200 hits should be displayed in the results. So you are checking. So as I said that we are checking it against 15 open source threat intelligence services, and one of them has come back with an output, an Intel service called Greens Now. And finally, so you can get an SMS on your device on your mobile saying that source IP, whichever the associated source IP is in this case, found. So it would show you these particular source IPs that source IP found positive against Intel check with Greens Now. So the Intel reference value is fetched from here. So it is against Intel feed Greens Now. So it would give you the entire detail of what has happened, and you could get a phone call as well if you customize it to that particular feature. So yeah, this is how basically SOAR would work. And you can see I gave you an example of the IP address part where the processes the processes perform manually, and you can see how simple it gets when I just do it here. It's just a matter of running 5 lines of queries. I could also go ahead and save it, and I could have it stored in my system, and I could just draw it up and I could run it anytime I want. And you can obviously see the speed, because when you're running such a complicated set of queries and you're getting results in under 30 seconds, that's absolutely amazing for a SOAR platform. What I would also like to show you is a dashboard from where you can perform SOAR functions, right? So of course, a SOC would have multiple dashboards drawing up various statistics, and you could get all sorts of data from different applications. So in this case, let's say for example, I've taken data from an Apache web server, and it shows the top user agents, the top HTTP methods, the threat map, right? This is pretty standard, and a lot of your security operations centers have these dashboards. What you could also do here is you could perform actions from the dashboards itself. So let's say I right click here, and I could easily fetch the URL details. I could fetch the user agent details for the top method not allowed requests, right? So I could easily go ahead and I could say that okay, this is the highest hitting URL. I could straight away block this IP or look it up on VirusTotal, or I could find a device. I could find the relevant device IP or block it on Blue Coat or a proxy for the top site for the IPs which have the top client-side error codes. Right? So you could perform multiple functions right from the dashboards itself, and this is the first, right? So it's a very unique feature set, and this is even better than running a set of queries. This is even more simpler. And yeah, so essentially I have demonstrated to you how SOAR makes your life easy and makes and reduces your headache. And that's about it from my end.
Okay, so that was Ruchir again. Thank you once again. Okay, so as I mentioned, share your knowledge and become a Connect community hero. We've had so many heroes this year, and in the next year we hope to add more to those lists, but never forgetting the ones who actually started it, right? Ankit Bose from PwC was the very first person who came onto DNIF Konnect and presented at that very time. Very grateful and very thankful to him. So remember, all community members, all you need to do is mail us at connect@nif.it, and we're more than happy to include you. Send us your topics, send us what you'd like to cover, how you'd like to cover it, and we'd be happy to include you into the Connect community heroes. Yeah, it's one of the things that I always am passionate about. Don't be a desk potato, right? So eat right, work out, stay active, and stay healthy. I know most of us sit in front of us, our desktop, our laptops, whatever it be, or just busy looking at monitoring a screen, as Ruchir mentioned, analysts, that's their job, right? So take some time out, get up, stretch, eat healthy. That's the most important thing. Eat healthy snacks, stay healthy, include little a routine of exercise into your lives. I know many of you will say, no, I do not have the time. We do have the time to eat unhealthy snacks and sleep extra, because we say that we've done a hard day's work. So include this will add to that hard day's work, and in a positive manner actually contribute towards your health. So keep that in mind. Yes, and now to announce the winner of the best question asked. So, looking around, we have a few questions that have been answered and few questions that we'll answer offline. And most of the questions that we have, we will post the answers for them on stack.nif.it, one place that the community members can come and contribute, ask questions, answer, and just basically, hang out with other, likewise community members. So, just give us a minute going backstage and figure out who the winner is. The winner is Saurabh Pathak. Saurabh Pathak is a second-time winner of, obviously, he's won for one of the earlier connects, and yeah, so it's great. He's asking the right questions, and a positive reply, coming from Ruchir as well, saying make him win. So that's it for us for this connect. I hope you've enjoyed this session. It was very specific, created, and put into place because of the inputs we got from Connect community members. They were very specific about the topics that they've requested us to cover, which we will do in the next coming year. But again, congratulations to the winner, Saurabh Pathak. Thank you for being dedicated member of the Connect community. A big round of thanks to Ruchir and Chetan for their presentations and contributions. They've taken out time from their busy schedule and been part of NIF Connect. Would like to thank the Connect team. Many a times I don't thank them. They do a lot of work behind the scenes and make this. It's a lot of work that goes into this, just to making just one NIF Connect session possible, and dealing with all the technical glitches, this, that, audio connectivity loss, not able to view the screen. All through that, we still, pull together and make it happen. So I'm very grateful to the whole team that they help out. Would at the end like to thank, this is the last session of the year, all the community, thank you very much. You constantly being patronage to Connect. You will be back next year, as I promised, early January. Remember, this community is nothing without you all, right? So thank each and every one of you. I would actually come and greet you myself, I can't. So please suffice with this online words of gratitude that I have. So till our next session next year, stay fit, eat healthy, have fun this festive season.